Welcome to Red Lines. This is a program that we x-ray all the fault lines in our relationships, in our businesses, and in our personal lives. What are those red flags that give away the character of a person? And today we're looking at gender-based violence. There's been a spike lately across both sexes in Nigeria. And to discuss further with me in the studio is Josie Itoya Splendor, a public affairs analyst and a film producer. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you. As always, it's a pleasure being here.
And seated next to her is Zainab Marwa Abubakar, a lawyer and the president of the Aspire Women's Forum. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
And my name is MAYOWAOLUWABIYI. Don't go away. We'll be back. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, the conversation is on gender-based violence. And I have two great women with me to rub minds on what the gender-based violence has evolved into in Nigeria, because there's been a lot of it in recent times. Josie, what are gender-based violence? How can you give us a brief overview?
Well, I think naturally or generally it means abuses in relationship. And when we say abuse, we mean abnormal use. Relationship is supposed to be a platform where people relate on human level, human level. I mean, you give maximum respect to each other. But when you see one party overstretching, overextending themselves to the extent that the other person is not comfortable.
Okay.
And this, when you talk about comfort, now you have to now even measure it. Some discomfort could actually lead to death. So I'll now say, yes, that's an abusive relationship and that's violence. The violence could also be physical or abusive. I mean, aura. When you use your words, you could actually really abuse someone so bad with the things you say to them that distorts their psyche and all of that. That's abuse in itself. Then when you now physically begin to harm the other person that is supposed to be, that you're supposed to make comfortable, and at that point I think you've introduced violence into a supposed relationship that is meant to be comfortable.
Okay. Zainab, there's been a spike in gender-based violence, especially since even pre the lockdown. Yeah. We've seen a lot of rape of minors, we've seen a lot of domestic violence, we've seen both ways. Men being stabbed by their wives, and all sort of thing. What do you think is responsible for this?
Well, with the recent COVID-19 outbreak, gender-based violence has even been called the shadow pandemic. So it's a pandemic in and of itself, because now we have people staying at home, closed off with their abusers, with the perpetrators of these acts. So for example, if it's the husband that beats the wife, maybe if there was nothing like COVID and nothing like the shutdown, the lockdown, you would find that they could escape. People could go to school or go to work or go to even the police station or the shelter. But of course, because of this lockdown, you're unable to escape. And so a lot of death has occurred because the abuse has not been able to be controlled. So we're talking about physical violence now. Sometimes when there's a volatile situation, someone can walk away or run away. So the perpetrator can walk away to cool off, or the victim can run away. But because of the lockdown now, especially in places where it was very strict, like overseas, but even in Nigeria right now, we find that a lot of death cases as a result of this shadow pandemic.
Wow. Josie, what's your take on that?
Yeah, she's right. Even after the lockdown, we're actually suffering the effect of the post-COVID lockdown. The economy has actually taken a nosedive. And you know, when the adult life is saddled with a lot of anxiety, and the man is now plagued with the thought of how do I make my business, gather momentum again. The downside of salaries. There are a lot of people that actually suffer this lockdown. Take for instance, private school teachers. For almost 6 months, there was really nothing. And even the business people, there are some businesses that didn't wake up until the past 6 months. I'm talking of the entertainment industry, the hospitality business. Now, these are source of livelihood for families. Now, just coming out from a place where you had this economy that was good enough to make things happen, and then suddenly you're not bringing home, and the needs are yawning. You go to the market, it's a daily thing now. You buy something 5 naira today, tomorrow is 7,000 naira. The next, and there's nothing anybody's doing about it. And then you now begin to look at towards the government, and even you're practically you can't even afford the basics of life. The fuel thing is higher, electricity is higher, and all of this could actually really put so much stress and strain on some partners, and then they take out this frustration on their spouses.
So those are the mental consequences.
Yes, that's it. So the society itself as it is right now is really, really volatile. You raise against too many things, and then people now really don't. When you're not happy, you have minimum
restraint.
Yes, on patience. You're just any little thing irritates you. Most people, when you come back to the house, and these are the same people that sent you out, your kids are still asking for the same thing they asked before you left. The wife is still looking up to you, and then you're like, please, you get pressed. And because you don't have what it takes to go out and unwind, it gets worse. I mean, people could just go out there. We are having little or no social life because people are doing a lot of cutbacks on just the necessities. It has come to the point where people have cut back, and even their cutbacks are now affected to the extent that you can't eat the meals you're used to. So all of this brings this depressive thing. So that's why people always say, after a pandemic, which you now see famine, then that leads to depression, like Great Depression and stuff like that. So I think if we still do some research back to the Great Depressions of the past, you find that most of it come after famine.
Okay.
Or famine after disease.
Okay.
So it's still a long drive from here. So that's why I think we need to do something. We should be able to get ready for what's going to come. So that's why.
All right, Zainab, let me come back to you.
With gender-based violence, it's an ongoing thing. It's a problem that I don't think will be solved that easily. The United Nations, under the able leadership of Antonio Guterres, is trying to do a unite. So by 2030, everybody should unite against gender-based violence to stop it and to end it. How possible is that? Because like you said, there are issues of depression and psychosis that lead to gender-based violence, but there are also some people that are predisposed to stupidity, and so they take it out on their
but sometimes
wives
our culture
and
actually
their
allows some of these excesses. Yes.
Absolutely, it does. But then, if you say that, why does everyone not, perpetrate such? Yes, so it's not. There's no excuse for gender-based violence. If it is the culture, the tradition, the religion, whatever you want to use, there's no excuse for it. So there's a need to have discussions like these sorts of discussions to reach the wider audience. The media has a very big part to play, because when this discussion becomes an everyday thing and is not something relegated to smaller shows, not something relegated to midnight shows, something that is on prime time for men especially to hear, because we have to also take a preventive stance. Gender, like you said, is men and women, and there are some men that are going through abuse,
Yes.
but for the
Verbal abuse
and physical, a lot of men are physically abused, and unfortunately, with all gender.
How do you mean? Women cannot abuse men.
They do. They
Really?
do very seriously.
Excuse me.
No, they
have the capacity.
They do beat them to death. So it's not even a laughing matter. Yes, they women kill their husbands, and even some women are emotionally abusive. You were talking about with oral, so that's emotional abuse. Some women are very, very abusive. They tear the man down, make him feel less than, make him feel useless. And we watch this a lot, but you might not know that it's a form of abuse. You've watched those women that tell their husbands they're useless, or that they can't do anything, and things like that. So it's something that it happens all the time. But just this reaction, this reaction is why most men don't talk about it. So it's when you laugh or you think it can happen, so most men don't talk about it.
All right, we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll be discussing the way forward on gender-based violence. Stay with us.
It's a taboo in Africa. It's a taboo to the human race.
And of course, we talked about the health implications.
Why the sudden increase in the rate of suicide in Nigeria? Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Red Lines, and we've been discussing gender-based violence. What are the causes? And now we're going to look at the way forward. Joseph.
Yes. Prior to a couple of years back, my growing up days, it was a normal thing to hear one's mom shouting and boom, boom, bang, bang, you know. It's normal, your party beat your man, you know. But when I started attending Living Faith Church, it became something that was sort of like a big sin, because the pastors then were preaching about it. How can a man beat his wife? How can you beat your wife? Now that's beginning to sound some kind of awareness that is actually not rational. And then what's on the street now is that you can't raise a hand on any woman. So what I'm trying to say, advocacy, advocacy, advocacy. And now we know there are two major opinion shapers in Nigeria, religion and ethnicity. Yes, and the bane of the problems will come from there. So when you have most men of God, whether Muslims or Christians, take to the pulpit and sound against violence, even on children. There's a lot of abuse going on in the home. So when you talk about gender-based, it shouldn't just be among spouses. I mean, the kids you're raising today, you're actually building somebody else's wife or husband. So, you know, that. And then sometime my brother said something to me, said, you know, it's because the man is seen as very powerful and the woman is seen as weak. That's why when you talk about gender-based, you're always talking about the man being the culprit. That, look, a lot of women really, really drain a man with their mouth.
True.
Yeah, you know, and I realize there's a cultural thing where we liken strength to a man, and when those things are not there, we just take away the definition of a man. Like when he's not providing, yes, when he's not providing, when he's not giving, it's almost like the masculine gender is to give all the time. You get it?
The provider.
When he's falling short of that, it's like the entire reason for his existence is shut down.
Well, that can be said about a woman as well. When you can't give birth.
Thank you. The same thing happens when you can't give birth. They believe that your entire existence is you're failed as a woman.
Yeah.
So people tie the importance of you and your makeup to what they expect you to be. If you're a wife or a mother, if you can't give birth, you are failed as a woman. And that is really bad, because I believe people are multifaceted.
That's true.
You're not just a woman, not just a wife, you are a person, you are a worker, you are a church preacher, you're something. So we shouldn't just define people by roles. And like I said too, in terms of saying, okay, the way you talk to your men, women these days are also breadwinners. They go through almost the same thing. So I think it's just an understanding. We should be able to preach out there to people, like I said, take the situations at hand. Look, we are going through unusual times. Let's take it easy on ourselves. Learn to talk to your kids. They need to slow down on needs. Maybe you're used to foreign rice. We have to cut down now to this, but it doesn't mean you can't go back. And then some parents also push themselves out there. You don't have what it takes to pay certain school fees and house rent. Go to the level you can maintain. When things get better, go back. Who are you impressing?
Yeah.
This is a call to reality.
All right, Zainab, your take.
Yes, I do agree with everything that she said, but I want to stress that because a lot of these things sound like excuses for why things are happening the way they're happening. You know, the economic downturn.
Like justification.
Like but I do believe that it takes a certain kind of man to hit his wife.
Or a certain kind of woman to hit her husband.
Yes, violence is one of the idiosyncrasies, I think, of a person's makeup. There are some men that even if you push them to the wall, they will never touch their wives. Their wife can even slap them, they will rather walk away.
That's true.
So those kind of men, even with all the stresses of, you know, the pandemic, they would never turn to violence.
Maybe they get a girlfriend outside to close the tension.
I mean, they just wouldn't hit.
Yes.
Whatever they do, they wouldn't hit. They wouldn't.
They've been wired that way.
Yeah, they wouldn't hit a woman. So leaning on the fact that there's stress or money problems, it doesn't matter. A man that hits is a man that hits. And then let's understand that gender-based violence is not something that occurs between people in a relationship.
Yeah.
You can be walking on the street and you get waylaid and you get raped. That is gender-based violence because they are targeting you for rape because you are a woman. Or you get mugged and beaten because you're this weak woman that can't fight. Or perhaps if they see someone like Mike Tyson, they wouldn't mug him even if they see him carrying money.
Of course.
You know what I mean? So these are gender-based violence is anything that you target a particular sex and, perpetrate crimes, violent crimes upon their person, be it sexual or otherwise.
Okay.
So what is government doing to stem the tide of gender-based violence? Joseph.
I don't think unfortunately I don't think government is doing much because even when the president is out there trying to this last increment in fuel and electricity tariff, there was no empathy. I mean, it's the role of the government and those in high. I mean, I know there are ministries. They should be good at NOA. What's NOA doing? These are outlets to calming the people and telling them it's just temporary. We're going to get there. You build nationalism and all of that periods like this, but nothing. I mean, you just go out and tell the people that there's nothing we can do about it. We're going to increase this. You're coming out from an epidemic. You're not faced with hiking practically everything, and your salary is still stable. Some don't even have salaries anymore. And these are your people. So for me, the government needs to do more. We need to have think tanks. It has come to a point where it's as if the entire country doesn't even know creative ways of making money apart from squeezing from the people. And it's this frustration. I mean, as in people, okay, look at even the recent palliative holiday. I mean, it's crazy. Okay, you're supposed to be giving out things like this, moments like this, and you're keeping them away. So what do you expect? So when people pick up the newspaper, you see frowns. When people talk about the government, they are more angry. And people are telling you, I'm going to whip out my passport, I'm going to Canada, I'm going away, I'm doing this. All of this geared towards even a societal violence on the self. Like for instance, somebody once said to me that, do you know what it's like for a man, to look at himself, the kids are asking for the things he gives them. I know personally I used to go out and get peace and all of that, but I've reduced on that. And then I was like, okay, I will go out today and do peace. I said, my friend, will you? That's something I would easily say, oh, okay, all right. But because it's not, like you see yourself really venting out more, then later bringing yourself together and then explaining to them. So that can take a lot of things. And for those who may not lash out, they might lash inwardly. And then before you know what people with the suicide rate might not like go high. Somebody's like, look, especially when a man can't actually express himself. That the woman saying that, you're abusing us. And that begins to go in and inwards and inwards. That's why I afford to have a girlfriend now. So the pressure is so internalized, and I think the male is not like the female. We're used to paying from pregnancy to childbirth, so there's one who can manage paying much more than we can. So if they are not lashing out externally, they are lashing. That too is bad balance against themselves.
All right, Zainab, your take.
Well, yes, of course. Most of what she said rings true in Nigeria, and we continue to challenge the government to do better. But there are some things being done with regards to gender-based violence, especially within this issue of the shadow pandemic of gender-based violence during the COVID-19 phase. There's what they call SARC, S-A-R-C, Sexual Assault Referral Center. So that was launched. Usually when a woman is raped, for example, there's certain roads that you have to go down, and if you don't do that, whatever you get will be inadmissible in the court of law. So for example, if you are raped and then you go to a private hospital, no matter what specimen they take, it's inadmissible in the Nigerian court of law. You have to first of all go to the police. After the police, then you go to the general hospital, which is the state-owned hospital. Then and only then can your whatever is taken, whatever samples are taken, so be admissible
you're saying
in the court of law.
Turn clothes and everything, you just move to the police station first?
Yes, ideally. Or you can bag your clothes, but the fact is that everywhere in the world, they do DNA testing.
Okay.
And they take rape kits. So a sample of the semen, they look at your passage and see what was done to you. Yes, because you're destroying evidence. So, and then apart from that, you have to go to a government-owned hospital. But before you go to the hospital, you must go to the police station. Yes. If you go to the hospital, even the government-owned hospital, before you go to the police, it's out.
Okay.
And most people don't know this.
Yeah. But there's something they call PEP. Is it PAP or what was that test you used to do?
The pap smear?
Somebody was saying something some time ago that a 4-year-old daughter of hers was raped or something, and they didn't know the process or the procedures. We were supposed to do a PAP test or something like that.
Yes, I believe the pap test is when you take a swab from the inner canals of the vagina to check, and then they look at the tearing and things like that. And most of the time, unfortunately, when they rape, there's also sodomy apart from, vaginal penetration. So they have to check all of those things. So now there's this sexual assault referral center. So it's a one-stop shop for every sort of sexual violence. They have the police there, they have the doctors there, they have the counselors there. Yes, and so now they've recorded about 5,773 cases in Nigeria.
When and when?
From when it started, I think last year or so till now. But the issue is, if you look at 200 million people, it's not even in a week, I'm sure we would surpass that number. So people do need to keep reporting and coming forward. And there's SARC in 18 states. But what they're trying to do is to make each and every state have a SARC center and, coordinate the data, because data is very important. When you don't know the trends, the fluctuations in numbers of GBV, gender-based violence, it will be very difficult to manage it. It will be very difficult to think about why it's happening, when it's happening, and what part of the country it's happening. So there's a need to collate more data. So the Ministry of Women Affairs have launched a data situation room of gender-based violence 2 days ago, and they're trying to have one place where they collate all the data and put everything together. Also, it may interest you to know that NAPTIP now have a sexual offenders list. There have been 414 perpetrators of sexual violence, yes, recorded, and then there's been 38 cases in court, and one of them, I think, was sentenced to life. 38 actual guilty verdicts, and one was sentenced to life. So we need to report more, but there's so much stigma. Nobody in Nigeria really wants to come and say I was raped.
But I thought there was this thing the Kiti State was doing some time ago. They come and they shame.
Exactly, yes. Name and shame.
They name shame.
I think they should do that more, and that's one of the things media can do. If they're doing it, people will be scared. It will be a deterrent.
Nothing should do that. I mean, somebody should just have the authority to say, okay, this is a 68-year-old man raped this, and then goes in the media. There was one I saw from the Kiti State.
Yeah,
I think it's shame, because you tie the man to his ego, and by the time you see, it's not only disappointing himself but his children and his family.
Exactly, it's
they will probably zip up
and take the stigma out of it as well. Where they're saying, it's the way she's dressed, it's because she's at women in full hijab. Women in full hijab get raped. So it's not about that. Exactly. So it's not about
your clothes.
Yeah, it's not about the woman. It's not about the victim. They should make it more about the perpetrator, less about the victim. They should shame the perpetrators and leave the victims out of it.
Well, thank you very much, Josie and Zainab, for your submissions. It's good to know that a lot has been done to stem the tide of gender-based violence in Nigeria. Thank you very much, Josie, for coming.
That was a pleasure.
Thank you, Zainab.
Thank you for having me.
But every good road must have an end, and I've enjoyed today's discourse. And wherever you are, whatever problem you have, don't bottle it up. Learn to speak out and watch out for the red lines. My name is MAYOWAOLUWABIYI. Thank you for watching.